Hey, welcome back. We're still here at the Vintage Super League. I just had a really interesting match against Rodrigo. I was on the red, white, and blue. It used to be a mentor theme deck, and now it's sort of a post-mentor deck. And Rodrigo is one of the three people tonight on a Leovold bug deck. So, Rodrigo, how did you decide that Leo is where you wanted to be in life?
So I think Leo's a cool card, and I think this deck is good against an expected field of paradoxical outcome and storm, maybe.
Absolutely.
So, but today's the games are not going on my side. But
well, we had a really close couple games there, didn't we?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem was both games. I never got a removal to kill your creature, and you got ahead too much with them. I have more removals in my sideboard and I put them in, but just got flooded game 2.
Seeker of the Way, I really like it because I was expecting Delver or Aggro Workshops, and it's a card that lets you race them pretty well. I mean, it's sort of a build your own Batterskull, and by attacking with it and draining 3 life a turn, it's really hard to burn you out. Against you, it was pretty close to being a Grizzly Bear or a Fresh Volunteer.
It's better than having another Pyromancer.
I went with a variety sampler. I went with 1 Mentor, 1 Pyromancer, and 1 Seeker. Now, I didn't expect the Seeker to go coast to coast like that, but he did his job. To me, in our match, it felt like Red Elemental Blast was enormous.
Yeah, so both time every time you tried to kill my Leovold, I think, I had the Force of Will, but never drew into the blue card.
Yeah.
Because one time you brainstorm in response to my Leovold and I mental misstep, and then on your turn you play the mountain, I think, and you pyroblast it, and then I just drew another wasteland.
You drew 3 wastelands. I Force of Willed your Ram you Nap Snake Fellow, but that didn't matter. The wastes were non-stop anyways.
Yeah, they're pretty good as well. I think the creator is quite strong, the Ramunap Excavator.
Yeah.
And I already was telling this to Reed before, like, it's a better Crucible if you are on green. Because when you have Wasteland, it's the same, plus it attacks, and when you don't have it, it's just a creature which swings for damage.
Absolutely. It's also synergistic with your Green Sun Zenith.
Yeah, so when the card got spoiled, I was really in love with it. So more than for Legacy than Vintage. But I think it gives some decks another edge that they can explode. I like to play Maverick in Legacy, and the card just fits into your Wasteland to Oblivion, your opponent's plan.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really strong card, and I'm glad it's seeing play. I think it's great. It's a threat. It can be a lock piece. It's card advantage. It's everything.
Why you chose to play this deck here with Pieces of the Puzzle, which is more of a modern card?
So I guess Pieces of the Puzzle deserves a bit of an explanation, doesn't it? So I had wanted to have 1 more card advantage spell in that slot, and I tried Compulsive Research. That's some Brassman technology, or maybe Stefan Ellsworth technology that I've tried it, and I was never particularly enamored of it. It's sometimes card advantage, and if you don't have a land that you're keen on discarding, it's kind of neutral. Pieces of the Puzzle, though, gets you a lot of nice things. It's almost always card advantage. This deck has 30 spells, so it's usually card advantage. It fills up your graveyard for Snapcaster and for Delve spells, and most of the time, getting 2 spells is going to be much better than drawing a random 3 and then discarding a land. So that's why I went with Pieces of the Puzzle. All right, looks like we're ready to watch Kevin Cron against Reed Duke. All right, here we have Kevin Cron against Reed Duke. These are two very, very strong players. So Kevin Cron is on Bug Still, which is just hilarious. I mean, check out that hand. And Reed Duke is on a bug deck, but it's less still. So they both have draw threes that are blue. Reed's costs a little less, but doesn't have sweet flavor text. So I really have to give Athena a lot of credit for the intros this time. I think they're great. I've never felt more like a superhero.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that vintage players are superheroes. Usually people think like old people telling stories about when they played 20 years ago.
Oh, that's what I do, yes. But also a superhero. Why not both?
So he's gonna Ancestor in response to Lotus. They fight, and what do you do now?
I feel like if you wanted to play Standstill, you could have just let the Ancestral resolve, because Standstill takes some of the bite out of it. I feel like Ramu Nap Excavator does a lot here.
Yeah, but he's not getting quite ahead with Ramunap right now. I think he's on the Lotus plan, on the Jace plan.
If his land arrived untapped, then Jace the Mind Sculptor would arrive. It's really awkward. I love the Creeping Tar Pit because it's a man land, which fits in with the land still theme, and it's producing two colors. But here we see it arriving tapped being really awkward.
Yeah, and here's the Abrupt Decay. If you was not gonna play the Lotus, why you also crack the Lotus while you play it there?
Does Reed have Thoughtseize?
I think no.
There's a fortunate one for Kevin Cron right there.
Red Duke has Nurrod, which he could play. He has one of Toxize.
Okay, and he has probably more than one Null Rod, right? I think all of us are Null Rod and or the white color.
So you lose against Toxize, but you win against Decay and Nurrod.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I agree with you then. Keeping it in hand seems like the better play.
There's another card you could play instead of Pieces of the Puzzle. That's from the new set. It's called Tragic Lesson.
Tragic Lesson. I remember the picture is that Bird God getting killed, right?
Yeah, it's an instant for blue and 2. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless you return a land you control to its owner hand.
That's not bad. That's probably worth trying. If like between you guys, I think all of you are on the max number of wastelands. And one of the really nice things about Gush was that you could use Gush to dance your land back to your hand to avoid Wasteland. So if we're getting into a universe where Wastelands are becoming more prevalent in blue decks because you can't use Gush to protect your lands from Wasteland, then I could see the ability to return a land becoming more valuable.
Yeah, also returning 2 lands against a Gush deck was not great, against a Mat deck was not great, but just saving one from, you get the card and then you get the temp on the cards, so everything is better with just returning one. I think this card is quite decent in Vintage. I think it's better than Pieces of the Puzzle.
You know, I'll admit I never even thought of that card, so it may well be. I kind of want to try it out now.
So Reed got to destroy the Lotus and then played his Leovold. And now, even with a standstill,
that's awkward.
Kevin has not drawn land, the third land to Toxic Deluge away. So, or the Fossil will to protect it. So he will need at least 2 draw steps to be able to come back to the game. And now we are seeing most likely an Abrupt Decay on the Mox to just vanish Kevin's options.
Right. The ability to deal with Leovold is severely limited in the bug decks. There's Abrupt Decay, which is a great answer. It always gives the opponent a card. Part of the reason for me wanting to play Red was that Red Elemental Blast seems so good in this universe.
Will you play Nullrod now?
If you're Reduke, I don't like Nullrod. Because Kevin's already used his Lotus, and anything else isn't all that scary.
Oh, Treetop Village.
Treetop Village.
A lot of manlands.
Yeah, I think manlands are great, but here they're just really not being very fast for Kevin. Now,
so right now, this Treetop does the same that would have done any other land. So.
Oh, though I don't think Kevin would have deigned to play a basic forest. I could be wrong, but I.
So now, Reed is able to double force.
Yeah,
so
this is over. I mean, Kevin could play a Ramu Nap Excavator, but it has a bunch of Force of Wills online. So Kevin is a very old-timey vintage player. He's been playing for a very long time. He goes way back on the Mana Drain and the old forums. And, of course, Reduke, also no stranger to vintage. He was responsible in large part for the resurgence in Storm decks.
Yeah.
So, do you think it's a coincidence that all three of you guys are on different bug decks, or is Leovold just such a strong card right now that you just sort of have to build a shell around him?
I think it's more of a coincidence. I will find it pretty weird that in the other groups there will be other bug decks, but you never know. It could be that. So I think Kevin has been testing maybe. So that's just I guess Rimura decks, because at the start of the format I liked them a lot, but then you saw a paradoxical outcome decreasing, and decks like the Ravager shops, you had a so bad matchup against this with the Remora decks, because now on the play, how many cards are you gonna draw? 2 cards, and then you're gonna lose your Remora. And if your opponent has just Workshop, he's gonna just slam a creature and another, and they're playing more creatures than Seers now.
Yeah, well said. I think that if the Workshop opponent says, I'll tell you what, if you tell your Workshop opponent, I'll draw a card whenever you play a non-creature, but my mana is going to be tied up for 3 turns, I think the Workshop player would immediately take you up on that offer.
Yeah, he will start playing Golems and Hankar Walkers. And
you're right. These days, Mishra is making lots of scary robot monsters.
Yeah, I still think that Mishra's Workshop should be the restricted card, but I know that it's not possible for the in-paper players.
I think that it would be very bad for the vintage community. There are a lot of players that only play Workshop decks, and I think that it would be really bad for them to have Workshop restricted. So I'm very strongly against restricting Workshop. And I think that whatever needs to be done to Workshop to keep it in line can be done by restricting lock pieces. So
yeah. Also, let us speak that paper vintage will not exist. Only Magic Online, where cards cost not so much.
Well, I love paper vintage. I think that anything that happens to paper vintage that would be bad for Magic. So I think that Workshops, it's a lot better, and I think that if Wizards is still concerned about where Workshops is in the metagame, then you can address that by hitting Revoker, Sphere. Basically, if Workshops becomes a fast aggro deck with some restricted lock pieces, perfectly fine. But I also think that the metagame is getting worse for Workshops. I mean, look at this bug deck that you guys are playing. You have so many cards. Mishra's Workshop has no interest in facing a Deathrite Shaman. It certainly doesn't want to spend its days facing people that main deck Trigon Predator. Even Leovold is not really great for a Workshop deck because, well, if you waste a land, now the opponent gets to draw a card. So I think workshops, they're still great, but they're not as good as they were. I think Wizards was right to restrict Thorn. I wouldn't mind seeing an additional lock piece hit, but no, I don't think there's any need to restrict Workshop itself because it's such an iconic card that so many people love and that so many people would be really unhappy if they didn't get a chance to play with.
Yeah, but I mean, if paper vintage will not exist, you think it's fine to restrict Workshop?
Hell,
If it would be like Commander, that online there's a different band list than in real life.
Well, that's a tough question. I know that the vintage community can be pretty sensitive to restrictions. I remember that the Brainstorm restriction did not do very good things for the vintage scene in New England. And maybe it's a fear of that happening, but I think that the restricted list should be used to foster the growth of vintage and encourage the growth of vintage rather than anything that might be detrimental to the advancement of the format.
So while there, Reed is playing his loved Leovold, and Kevin has absolutely no anything, just a land and spells that he can mostly not cast. So Reed could get ahead, discarding and destroying Kevin's mana. It's weird that this back deck, even that it plays so many lands, it's so soft to land destruction.
Mm-hmm. It is, and the problem with Standstill has always been that it's only good if you're ahead or at parity, and it's really terrible if your opponent's ahead. I mean, the Standstill decks, be it blue-white landstill, or bug still, or any other kind of still deck is, I mean, look, Kevin can't play Standstill here. He'll be dead immediately. And that's not even mentioning the fact that he would draw 0 cards.
Yeah, and he needs a green land right now. So
yeah, kind of Viking, exactly.
If he doesn't, so he needs to draw it this turn. He goes to.
I don't think Kevin has much of a chance. I mean, what are his outs? He can draw a green source and not the come into play tapped 8 sort of land. He can abrupt decay Reed Duke's team. But Reed Duke has a demonic tutor, thousands of counters in his hand, in the sense that Flusterstorm is an arbitrary number of counters. And, of course, a Dragon Lord to steal whatever Kevin tries to do. So I just think this one's about over.
Reed's attacked, so Kevin's is at 2. No, even a green source lets it's not an out.
It's I don't know what.
So he could draw Black Lotus and double DK, but I'm pretty sure this Lotus will get forced and much more after probing.
Yeah, so I guess Kevin would need to have, like, no, I don't think he has any outs. Forced to hit Leovold, Brainstorm into a Lotus. I don't know. There might be some sort of Christmas Land scenario, but I don't see it happening.
It's Time Walk, and that's game over.
Yeah. Well,
Brainstorm for 1 card.
They conceding here.
I find Ancestral Recall, which is
0 cards now.
Yeah.
I guess you could force opponent to draw 3 cards. So Reed Duke has waltzed through 2 bug mirrors.
Yeah, and he will face you.
Yeah.
He plays you, or he plays.
He will face me, and we will see who gets to go 3-0 tonight and who gets to go 2-1. Looks like we're gonna go to ad.
Need the